Hey everyone, it's Michael from Portworx. Thanks for joining us today for this Lunch and Learn all about uncomplicating data on Kubernetes. Let's give folks a few minutes to join, a few more minutes for Chipotle to show up. Hopefully you all got your lunch gift card, and then we'll go ahead and get started about 5 minutes after the hour. So just get settled, grab a bite to eat, get a glass of water or whatever, depending on what time it is for you, and yeah, we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone. Alrighty, folks are starting to trickle in, which is awesome. So just a reminder, folks, we're going to get started about 5 minutes after the hour. So grab your lunch, grab something to drink, and sit back, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Thanks. All right, just 2 more minutes and we'll go ahead and get started, everyone. Thanks a lot. All right, it's the final countdown. Just 1 more minute to go, and then we'll get started. Hopefully, your food has arrived. I had some tortellini myself for lunch today. It's delicious. Figured it would be a little bit harder for me to be eating while I was presenting, so so I went ahead and ate ahead of time. All right, in 3, 2, 1, we are live. Hey folks, thanks for joining us. Really excited to chat with you today as you kick back, take a little bit of time off from your busy day, and listen to what we're hearing from customers about how they're uncomplicating data on Kubernetes. This is part of a 2-part series. So my name is Michael Ferranti. I'm Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Portworx. I've been with Portworx, wow, for over 4 years now. We were acquired by Pure Storage about a year ago, but I was with Portworx for about 3 years prior to that. And I'm going to do the first part of this series with you, and I'm going to kind of lay some foundations about kind of what I've seen over really the last 6 or 7 years working in this ecosystem. Because prior to joining Portworx, I was with another company that had a solution around storage and containers, and a lot of things have changed really since the introduction of Docker in terms of how we manage these modern containerized applications. So I want to share some of that background, share some of the things that we're just learning now from customers, kind of new things that are popping into the market. And then our second part, we'll hear from our CTO, Gu Rao, who's going to go into a little bit deeper of a dive around the Portworx solution. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, please ping me via the chat. So everybody should have, there's actually, I don't actually know if you have a chat or if you have a questions tab as part of GoToWebinar, but just click on one of those and just pop it in there. And I'll probably try to monitor those as much as I can while I'm talking. But if I don't get to them kind of as I'm going through the presentation, we'll get to them at the end. And if we really run out of time, then we'll follow up with you after the lunch and learn. So let's dive into it. We've got kind of a diverse audience here, which is awesome, because I think we're all coming at this Kubernetes thing from a different perspective, and I think that's what makes it interesting. So I'll try to be fairly broad in my perspective, so that there's something for everybody here. All right, so as you take your first bite, I'll start by saying, we're all in the business of innovating, right? It doesn't matter if we work at an MSP, if we work within an enterprise, if we work within a startup. It's all about innovation. Innovation is the name of the game in whatever business you're in right now, right? It's not enough to be the biggest company on the block anymore. In fact, that's a liability. It means you're sometimes a sitting target or a sitting duck. The companies that win in their market are the ones that are most innovative, that move the fastest, right? Not necessarily the people who think up the best ideas, right? Big companies are really good at thinking up great ideas, but when it comes to actually executing on them, that's been the province of startups, right? And that's why they can be so disruptive to existing business models. But big companies have realized that. And they've said, hey, we too need to be innovative, right? We can't just come up with these great ideas that happen in the boardroom. We actually need to enable all of the individuals within our customers to innovate, to do new things, to create new products and services. And I love this quote that illustrates that point, which is creativity is thinking up new things, right? It's easy to be creative, but innovation is doing new things. And so we all want to innovate. But sitting where you sit, sitting where I sit, I see things that inhibit innovation on a daily basis. And those are things like manual processes, functional silos, legacy tooling, monolithic architectures, right? These are the things that are holding back innovation in companies big and small. And the result of that, we talk to customers about, just tell me how your day's going. What we hear is that they spend a lot of time kind of firefighting and not a lot of time innovating. What that looks like is they come in the morning and, overnight they were struck by a ransomware attack, or, there's a new patch that needs to be applied to all of our operating systems, or a new container vulnerability, or a disaster and we have to do a migration. And so that kind of consumes the first half of the day. Then, when that's done, it's like, okay, well, let me look at the tickets, what I got to do. I need to migrate this out from over here. I need to deploy this database. I need to, we're expecting, a big burst of traffic for our Black Friday sale. We need to scale the application. CFO says we got to cut costs by 20%, so let's do some optimization. And you do all of that, and it's 15 minutes before the end of the day, and you have some time to do some innovation, right? After you're tired. And that's just not how innovation works. And yet that's the life of many of our customers. And unfortunately, when we look at the topic of today's conversation, right, on how to make data on Kubernetes less complicated, data makes the problem worse. It simply makes the problem worse, because when you're talking about data within enterprise applications, you have to think about data security, data protection, backup and recovery, and really managing complex configurations and deployments. It's every single one of those apps that you're deploying has these requirements, and the cost of failure is high and the room for error is low. And that leads to a lot of complexity, not least because when we're talking about Kubernetes, we're talking about modern applications, and modern applications run on modern data services. You all are familiar with traditional application architectures, kind of 3-tier apps, monolithic architectures, where companies would say, what, we're an Oracle shop, or we're a Microsoft SQL shop, or we're an SAP shop, and you basically had a database or a small number of databases that housed all of your enterprise data, and you would run it on the biggest server rack that you could get from Oracle, right? I don't know if you're an Economist fan, but I always loved on the back of the Economist, for years and years and years, there would just be like a gigantic server ad from Oracle, some Exadata version, whatever. And the idea was that the way in which, if your app is really important, if it needs to scale, well, then you need a bigger and bigger server. Fast forward 20 years, and modern applications like those that are being created not only by the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world, kind of the Netflix of the world, but also innovative companies like Kroger, like T-Mobile, like Roblox, are being built with new architectures that are based around microservices. And one of the results of a microservice is that our data set is distributed across many different types of databases. So we might put our product catalog into Elasticsearch because we want to give a great type ahead search experience, like a Google-like search experience, where if I type the word tea, I get a listing of all of the movies that start with T, or the food products in my grocery store that start with T, or whatever. But I might, when someone places an order for one of, for one of those products, I might want to take that order using Couchbase as my transaction processing database. But then I might want to send that order to, say, my billing system. And so I'm taking data in one place and I'm sending it to another place. And so I might use Kafka for that. And then when the customer wants to, pull up their order history, maybe that's being served with a document database like MongoDB. And so the point is that each of these microservices picks a specialized data service that is optimized for the job and processes a subset of my total application data. And why is this complicating? Well, if you think back to the slide before where we talked about each data service needing backup and DR and data security and to understand complex distributed systems deployments, well, you still need all of that, but unfortunately, Cassandra does it different from Couchbase, which does it different from MongoDB, which does it different from Elasticsearch. So not only do your teams need to be sophisticated enough to understand which data service I should use for which microservice, but they also need to be an application or an operational expert in each of those data services. So it's a pretty grim picture, and this got dark fast, right? Sorry about that. You're coming here for a lighthearted lunch and learn, and I'm kind of I'm telling you all of these complicated things about running modern data services on Kubernetes. But there is a bright side, and the bright side is that companies who figure it out are reporting dramatic business impacts from running databases on Kubernetes, right? So this is the hopeful part, right? This is the part that says, okay, so it's not just that it's complicated, right? And like, if I'm not interested in complexity for complexity's sake, I'm going to move on to the next thing. It's if we can figure it out, then there's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's really efficiencies and impact at the end of the tunnel. And so this data that I'm showing in the slide here came from a survey that we conducted just a few weeks ago with a third-party independent research company called Wakefield Research. And we hired them to do a kind of an independent, non-vendor biased survey of IT professionals with significant knowledge of their Kubernetes usage, and who are also currently running stateful services like databases on Kubernetes. And essentially the point of the survey was, how's that working out for you? And what we got back was, enlightening to say the least, and very, very encouraging. So I'm just pulling out a few of the highlights from that survey in this slide. We actually have the full surveys available on purestorage.com, and as well as portworx.com. We just had an announcement this week where we used it. So you can find the full survey. But some of the highlights are, 55% of those IT pros who, with significant knowledge of their Kubernetes deployments and who are currently running stateful services on Kubernetes, reported that their applications scale faster when they do that, and their developers are more efficient when they do that. 54% said that they could develop applications more quickly. 50% said that they could actually increase security by leveraging automation as a result of running those data services on Kubernetes. And I think Kubernetes, in my mind, is all about speed and agility and scale. But there was this interesting finding that a third of the sample, after getting all the other benefits, found that they could also reduce their IT budgets because of running stateful services on Kubernetes. And how is that even possible? Well, what they reported was significant hours saved on an FTE basis due to operational efficiencies of running data services on Kubernetes. And so, at the end of the day, the driving force for all of these benefits, scale, efficiency, time to market, security, it's all about Kubernetes being a platform that allows us to automate mundane and repetitive operations so that we can leverage software for what software is really good at. We can leverage people for what they're good at, right? Software, at least not yet, is not good at writing your application for you. Software is really good at running your application, right? And if you remember back to the origin story of Kubernetes itself, it came from Google, and they had a unique problem. They had like 3 of the 3 largest web applications on the internet, right? Google search, YouTube, and Gmail. And they built Kubernetes in order to run those systems. And the reason it's not that they couldn't hire smart enough people to run those services. It's that they couldn't hire enough people, right? Google is famous for its, we sent you a very nice DoorDash gift card for your lunch here, but if you're working at Google, you're probably in the corporate cafeteria, having sushi prepared by a private chef, and then you go after that, you go for your massage. So it's a great place to work, and no problem hiring top talent, but there just simply aren't enough ops engineers, DevOps engineers, SREs on the planet to keep up with the scale of Google search and YouTube. And so they had to figure out ways to use automation, and that's the key metric. That the light at the end of the tunnel, the benefits that come from Kubernetes is all about automation. But you would think that if it's so great, everybody's doing it. As we already pointed out, there are some challenges to it. And I want to dive into a little bit about what customers told us about some of their challenges. So we asked, okay, so you love the idea of running these stateful services, and you're getting significant business value from it. But what are the requirements of those apps? And not surprisingly, we saw data backup and restore, and data mobility and capacity management, HA, multi-cloud, encryption, DRs coming very frequently as requirements for those stateful apps running on Kubernetes. But then we have, okay, so which of those or others are you struggling with? And it turned out that about a third of the sample was having trouble with one or another of those resources, and many people had trouble with multiple. And so that's really telling, because on the one hand, there's this strong desire to leverage automation to run more data services on Kubernetes so that we can scale our apps faster, so that we can get to market sooner, so that our developers are more efficient, and in many cases, we can actually reduce our costs. But there are challenges when it comes to doing so. This is the perfect opportunity for a software solution to come in and remove those challenges and enable the benefits that come from running stateful apps on Kubernetes. And that solution is Portworx. So I want to talk a little bit about why Portworx, but I also want to give you a little bit of a background on our journey as a company, and some of the customers that we've been helping over the years. So I'll start by saying that we're really proud to have been named 2 years in a row the gold standard in Kubernetes storage by GigaOm Research. And this was, this is based on both our, the breadth of our platform, but also the demonstrable success that we're having running it for some of the largest enterprises in the world. And I've got some of our customers here across many of the verticals and use cases that are on our Lunch and Learn today, and some others that aren't. So we have customers across telecommunication and entertainment and gaming and SaaS providers, automotive, retail. And the good news for you listening in is basically, this is a small subset of our customers, but you can know that if you have a problem, that we've worked through it with another customer, and we can bring that expertise to bear on your particular application. So that's who Portworx is. But how do we solve the data problems for our customers holding back innovation? How do we uncomplicate Kubernetes for them so that they can get the benefits of running data services on Kubernetes without any of the downsides? Well, there have kind of been three areas that we focus on. The first area has been cloudifying our customers' infrastructure. So at its origin, Portworx is a software-defined Kubernetes native storage platform. So we layer on top of the infrastructure that you're running on-prem or in the cloud. We're completely infrastructure agnostic. And so we're part of Pure Storage, and we have many customers that are running on top of Pure Storage, but we have customers that are running on top of NetApp as well, on top of HPE, on top of Dell, on top of the bare metal servers, on top of vSAN, even in some cases Ceph, in a software-defined data center. But we also have customers that are running us on top of Amazon, EBS block storage, our Google persistent disk, or Microsoft block storage. But what we do for those applications running on top of that infrastructure is provide container granular volumes with HA and data protection and more that are built in. And that gives a cloud-like experience, regardless of the operating environment the customer finds themselves in. And this is particularly important for multi and hybrid cloud use cases where you actually run applications in multiple environments and need a consistent storage experience, even though the physical storage available in each of those environments is quite different. So once we've done that, we realize that it's not enough to give customers storage, as agile as it may be, if the end goal is for them to run one of the data services that we talked about earlier on Kubernetes, right? Storage is not enough to run your database. You also need to solve all of those enterprise requirements that come along with enterprise apps. We already saw what they are, right? Availability and security and migrations and DR and backup and capacity management. And the collection of an agile container granular storage platform plus the ability to deliver, HA and security and mobility and data protection and automated scale is what we call the Portworx Enterprise Platform. So our customers are, Fortune 2000 enterprises, large-scale SaaS providers, innovative cloud companies who are using the Portworx Enterprise Platform to solve the storage and data management requirements for modern applications running on Kubernetes in an API-driven self-service way. That's the bulk of our business today. But we're never one to rest on our laurels. And so we said, okay, what else could we do? If there is enormous value in running data services on Kubernetes, as our survey points to, what else can we do? And we realized that there's still a lot that needs to be done in order to run, say, a MongoDB or a Cassandra or a Kafka on Kubernetes, in addition to solving backup and DR migrations, etc. You also need to understand how to deploy distributed systems, how to manage day two operations when things fail, how to scale, say, MongoDB differently from how Elasticsearch scales, how to set up monitoring, and how to manage the overall application lifecycle from initial deployment through to archive. And it's this top layer that we're rolling out currently under the name of Portworx Data Services, or PDS. And I've got a slide here in a minute or two that talks more about PDS, but you can think about Portworx as a company of operating at three levels, with a goal of enabling any modern data service to run effortlessly on top of Kubernetes. So we're going to provide you that agile storage platform that can run on any infrastructure. We're going to solve all of your enterprise requirements, whether they're high availability or security or mobility or data protection or capacity management for those apps. But additionally, we're also going to start providing the actual data service itself, providing you with a database as a service platform that you can use to deliver, for instance, a service catalog to your internal users. So you can build a platform where people click on a button and now they have a RabbitMQ cluster or an Elasticsearch cluster or MongoDB database without having to become an operational expert in that service. And we'll look at a little bit more how we do that. Diving a little bit more into the Portworx Enterprise Platform, it's really unique on the market in terms of both its breadth and its flexibility in fitting into whatever environment you happen to find yourself in. We like to say it works with what you have today. So our customers are running all of these stateful services and more with Portworx. If it runs on Linux, then Portworx can provide both storage and data management capabilities for that application. We integrate with any Kubernetes distribution. So some of the most popular are here, but Rancher is not up here, and we work with Rancher too. And if you want to use vanilla Kubernetes, then we work with that too. Any Kubernetes distribution running on any cloud or infrastructure. I made this point earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. Portworx is completely infrastructure agnostic. So that while we're part of Pure Storage, and we love it when customers run on top of Pure Storage, if you want to run in your NetApp and get more out of that investment, then that's fine with us. If you want to run on HP or Dell or your VMware environment or bare metal servers, you can do that as well. And then we fit into every stage of the application lifecycle. So this is our flagship product. This is all of the logos that you saw previously. That's what they purchased. That's what they're buying. The ability to do storage, backup, DR, migration, security, and automated capacity management, which we call PX Autopilot. But we didn't want to stop there because we knew that deploying, say, Elasticsearch on top of Kubernetes requires more than storage and data management. It requires an operational understanding of how to deploy Elasticsearch, how to scale it, how to back it up, which is different from how to do all of those things for Kafka than it is for MySQL. So we said, why don't we actually provide a one-click database as a service platform, or as I mistyped here, a DBAS as a service, so a database as a service as a service. I figure since it's lunchtime, I can crack a little bit of a joke on myself there. But deliver a database platform, database as a service platform, excuse me, where you can pick from a catalog of curated data services. Let's say click Cassandra, say where do I want to deploy it, right? How large of a cluster do I want based off of a template that Portworx has predefined, set up my backup policy, set up my security policy, and hit deploy. And now, just like RDS, when you click deploy, you're going to end up with a connection string that you can log into MySQL or log into Postgres, start sending data, and not have to run the data service. You just use the data service. That's the experience that PDS provides. And this is actually a SaaS application. So we call this the control plane for PDS, and the control plane for PDS runs in the Portworx cloud. But the database itself, that runs in your Kubernetes cluster, and that cluster can be anywhere. That can be on-prem or it can be in the cloud. And so you maintain control of where your data services run, but you leverage the Portworx cloud for configuring and managing those databases. Over time, there will also be an option to run this as a self-hosted service on premises if that's your preference. Oh, excuse me. So PDS is available now as early access. So what that means is that you can register for access to PDS. Our product management team is currently letting people in as resources become available. You're familiar with this, for how Google lets people into new services, right? There's a ton of demand. You want to make sure everybody has a great experience, so you kind of let people in slowly. So we're currently doing that right now with PDS. We hope that the EAP program, or the early access program, will be complete this year in Q4, and that we'll be able to make PDS generally available to our customers in early 2022. So what's next? With this in mind, I see a couple of next steps for you. So if you agree that running data services on Kubernetes is beneficial to your business, but you don't know how, reach out to us. Kick off a POC with us, get a custom demo. Let us know how we can help you, how we can apply the learnings that we've gained from working with some of the largest, most sophisticated Kubernetes users in the world to your specific application and your specific business. If you like the look of PDS, you can also register for our EAP program, or early access program, for that. Just go over to portworx.com and you can find it. And I've also got a URL for our requested demo page here. So that's a lot of talking. So I'd love to actually do Q&A now. And so if you are still, and it looks like we're actually, a bunch of people have logged in since I started, which is awesome. Why don't you just put some questions in the chat, and we can just kind of knock them out and answer anything. And let's consider this an AMA and ask me anything. No questions are off limits. Let's keep it interactive. And while folks are typing, I will, I spend a lot of time talking to customers, and so I know there are some questions that come up regularly, so I can actually just throw some of those out here, maybe just to get your neurons firing in some of the ways in which you can use Portworx. One of the most common questions that we get is actually, okay, all that sounds good, but I'm actually running in the cloud, and I don't really get why I need Portworx, because I already have, say, Amazon EBS if I'm running in Amazon. And it's a great question, and I think it's actually almost the perfect question to really understand the value of different layers of the software stack. So if you're running 100% in Amazon, you said, you know what, I never want to step foot in the data center again. I'm going 100% to the cloud. Then you still need Portworx. Why do you need Portworx? Because Portworx is a Kubernetes is a software-defined storage layer for Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is all about applications. It's not about managing infrastructure. So Kubernetes is not like OpenStack. OpenStack is about providing compute, network, and storage to applications. Kubernetes is about actually running applications. So applications need infrastructure. And so applications need infrastructure, and that infrastructure is compute, network, and storage. But then actually at the Kubernetes level, you need to be able to provision that infrastructure tied very, very specifically to apps and to containers. So here's a for instance. Imagine I want to deploy 50 containers to an EC2 instance. And each of those containers should have a volume. This is actually a real use case. In fact, we have customers that at peaks are deploying 1,000 containers with a volume each to an EC2 instance. There's a great talk by one of our customers at Harvard University at KubeCon a few years ago about how they're building their IDE environment for their CS Computer Science 100, or I think it's CS 50, which is the Intro to Computer Science at Harvard. And when students join that class, they actually get an IDE environment, something development environment, individual development environment, interactive development environment. I'm hazy on my acronym there. And so, a bunch of students show up, they get this environment, each of that environment has a volume. And then when the student finishes the class, that environment is destroyed, or maybe they drop the class and they don't need it, or, they spin it up and then, they don't do anything with it until, 8 hours before the test, and then they go into it and do a bunch of activity. It's a very spiky system, and so you get these big bursts of activity, and you have to create a lot of volumes. But Harvard has a very rich endowment, but that doesn't mean that they're going to spend. They want to spend it all on infrastructure, so they're very kind of cost conscious and try to pack as many of those environments into a single EC2 instance as they can in order to keep costs low. And Portworx is helping with that. Okay, that's an aside. But let's go back to our more simple example. I want to deploy 50 containers with volumes on Amazon. Well, with Amazon, you're limited to how many EBS volumes you can attach to a EC2 instance. So in my example, you simply could not attach 50 EBS volumes to one EC2 instance. Whereas with Portworx, you can attach one EBS volume, Portworx virtualizes it, and then we carve out as many container granular volumes as you need and mount them into each of those containers. On top of that, then, now that individual volume can be, it can have its own HA policy, can have its own encryption key, can have backup policy, can be individually migrated. So we basically separated out the physical infrastructure from the application level infrastructure. And that's an example of Portworx adding value to the cloud, and kind of the value goes on and on, but hopefully that is makes it a little bit clearer. And then when you think about what do we do in an on-premises environment, well, there we do all of that, but then we also provide the kind of the agile, scalable, API-driven storage that you can't get typically in an on-premises environment. So, that's a common question. Hopefully that helps. And it looks like folks have been thinking up, and we've got kind of got a joker in the audience who's throwing me a curveball. But I appreciate that. It actually makes this fun. And they're asking, how does PDS differ from Amazon RDS? And I think that's a great question. So, I'll be the first to say that Amazon RDS is a great service. And if you have a database that you want to run, Amazon RDS is a great service. If you have a relational database that you want to run, then RDS is a great service. the experience that it provides is really what developers want, frankly, right? I don't want to be an ops expert. I want to use the database. I just want to send some data to Postgres. I want to be able to log in. I want to be able to create my tables, create my schema, and that's it. I don't want to have to worry about how it's running and where it's running or why it's not running. I just want to use it. That experience is exactly what we try to replicate with PDS. The difference comes in two ways. So one, RDS is great if you're running in Amazon, but if you're running on-prem, RDS isn't available. If you're running in Google, right, Amazon RDS isn't available. Google has a managed database as a service, but many applications now are running multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. And each of those services has its own nuances. And so you're going to have different runbooks depending on the cloud that you're operating in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that RDS is limited to relational databases. So if you want to run Kafka or Cassandra or Elasticsearch, those aren't available. If even if Amazon has another service for those, you're less likely to have flexibility in the specific versions of those applications. We work with a lot of enterprises who need very, very specific versions of data services that they've tested with the rest of their infrastructure stack. And so from a catalog perspective, RDS is fairly limited. So what we did is we said, okay, let's build the same experience, the one-click install, the autonomous management, but for a broad catalog of data services made available on any infrastructure. And that's essentially what we're delivering with PDS. And so if that sounds like something that you could leverage, please go to portworx.com, check out the register for the EAP program. There's actually a link right up at the top of the website about the PDS announcement, and give it a shot. I think actually the other thing actually that I wanted to mention is it's not just that we have a broad catalog, meaning that I can pick, I want to run one instance of this database from your broad catalog. No, what a typical Portworx customer does is run many different data services at the same time because they're running microservices. So the reason a broad catalog is important is because their app is supported by many data services. And I want to run many instances of many different data services, and that becomes cost prohibitive when you're using a managed cloud model. It's complex if you're going to do it yourself. And so PDS kind of solves that complexity part, as well as solving helping assuage some of the cost concerns. So thank you for that. Hopefully that is inspiring some other people on the line to dial in with the question. What else do I hear from customers? And I understand you don't want to unmute while you're chewing. I totally get it. That is Zoom and webinar etiquette 101. So much respect there. What other questions do I get? So I'll sometimes folks ask us, what's the deal with Pure Storage and the integrations there? I imagine that we've got some Pure customers here, so I'll handle that quickly, which is to say, we really want to make running Portworx on top of Pure Storage the absolute best experience that it can be. We have some large joint customers. Prior to the acquisition, T-Mobile, for example, who is running all of their Kubernetes workloads with Portworx on top of FlashArray. So it's an awesome integration. And we've deepened that integration over the last 12 months. Now you can actually dynamically provision volumes off of a FlashArray via Portworx. So you don't have to pre-provision those volumes manually. You can actually do it just in time with Portworx. And then Portworx can do the virtualization, container granular virtualization on top of that. We also have an integration into Pure One now, so we can send your logging and your metrics into Pure One, which over time allows us to benefit from the AI and ML capabilities of Pure One Meta, which is pretty exciting. So lots more cool stuff coming down the pipe there. Okay, great. So got another question that's just come in, and this one is about DR. Can you talk a little bit about your PXDR solution and kind of, Yeah, can I do asynchronous replication? Yeah. So yeah, good question. So DR is a kind of a big topic, and so I'll try to kind of make this simple. So basically, when we talk about DR, we are talking about a situation where my application is running someplace, and it there's some type of failure, and I want to recover it. But I want to recover the latest version of my application. This differs from backup, where I'm running my application and maybe there's no problem, but for some reason, I need to restore an older version of my application. Maybe it is. Maybe I want to clone it and restore the latest version. But oftentimes, for instance, for compliance reasons, I need to restore an older version of my application. So there's this difference of like what point in time do you want to roll back to? And with our DR solution, it's always about rolling back to the most recent. And so that's the first point. The second point is that depending on where you want to recover from, you basically have different network limitations. So if I'm running in US East in an Amazon data center and I want to recover on US West, well, synchronous replication of your data is not a good fit for that, right? Because the latency between East and West US is quite great. Whereas if I'm running, say, in a regional data center network, or I have I'm running in US East, but then I'm direct connected into a colo facility by Equinix in that same region, synchronous replication is probably a great idea. We generally recommend more than 10 milliseconds round trip. And so with PXDR, you have the flexibility to pick the level of basically synchronous or asynchronous replication, depending on your network configuration. And the other benefit is that we don't just move the data; we also move the application configuration. And this is really, it's not about data protection at this point, because we're synchronously replicating or asynchronously replicating the data, and there you're just making a trade-off on basically what your RPO is, right? How much data loss am I willing to endure to recover this particular application? If you do asynchronous replication, you need to be able to endure more. If you do synchronous, then you can say, hey, I can't endure any data loss, in which case we call it RPO 0. But there's also this notion of how quickly can I recover my application, right? How quickly can I get it back up and running? And that's RTO. And RTO is all about, do I have all the components of that application staged and ready to go in my DR location as along with my data? And Portworx makes sure that all your app configuration is also available in both of those locations. So that's so to answer your question shortly, yes, we can do asynchronous replication. We can also do synchronous replication, and you can determine what you want for each of your individual applications. So thank you for that question. Looks like we've got another one coming in here. Can you talk a little bit about security and how you help with that in Kubernetes? So yeah, that's another good question. So we're not very creative over here on the Portworx marketing side of things. So we name the capabilities of our product in a boring way, where we have this thing called PXDR, and what does it do? Well, it does DR. We have PX backup. What does it do? Well, it does backup. So we also have PX secure. So what does it do? Well, it does security. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that is container granular encryption and role-based access controls. So when we talk about data security, so first of all, security is a really big topic. Lots of people are involved in security, and only doing data security is not sufficient. It shouldn't be sufficient for any organization. But data security is a necessary part of a viable security posture. And with PX Secure, you can actually shift left your security posture on your DevOps teams by making it really easy for them to encrypt their data at that container granular level, not the disk level, right? Because oftentimes containers are associated with multi-tenant systems. I might have either untrusted tenants within an organization, or just different customers running on the same infrastructure. And I don't want a single key to encrypt my disk. And now I've got, if that key is compromised, then all of my customer data is exposed. I probably want to use a single key for each of those tenants or each of those customers. And with Portworx, doing that it's actually checkbox simplicity. It's really technically YAML file level easy, where you can specify that you want a container encrypted with its own key that integrates with your key management system, HashiCorp Vault or Amazon KMS or whatever you're doing in Google or Azure. And even if that host is compromised, your data is still encrypted, and it's different from the encryption key for all the other volumes that are on that host. So that's the first thing. The second thing is role-based access controls. So with Portworx, we actually can mirror the RBAC, which is an acronym for role-based access controls, that's present in Kubernetes, that defines what objects an individual can have access to. But that actually, like if I say this individual can only access these PVCs within Kubernetes, a PVC is a persistent volume claim. That's really that's a YAML file. That's saying this person can't see this particular YAML file, but that YAML file, it points to an actual volume on a disk, but it's just a representation of it, right? Like the way a map is a representation of territory, it's not the territory itself, right? Okay, so but Portworx, what we can do is we can actually apply those same RBAC ideas down to the infrastructure level. So we can actually prevent someone who within Kubernetes should not be able to see a YAML file for a PVC. We can prevent that person from, say, mounting that volume. And so we extend the role-based access controls that Kubernetes enables down to the infrastructure level. And then, of course, like all of the encryption of data in flight and all that kind of stuff, just best practices around using SSL and all those types of things are come along with Portworx. So hopefully that helps. Thanks again for the question. So we've got looks like we've got a couple more minutes, and so I'm going to try to get to one more question, and then if I didn't get a chance to answer your question, we'll follow up with you after the webinar. So if you think of something right before I sign off, just type it in there and we'll make sure to get back to you. Okay, so what's something that I think a lot of people would be interested in? Okay, that's actually a good one. So this person is saying, OpenShift has a storage solution, and how does Portworx either differ or complement in essence? And so I think it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I did say this was an AMA, so nothing's off limits. We have a lot of customers that are running on kind of Kubernetes platforms like OpenShift, like VMware Tanzu, like Amazon EKS, etc. And all of these platforms have a base level of functionality around storage and data management. Portworx was part of an industry that solved these problems, for the first time. And we're really glad that those solutions, for instance, the ability to map a volume to a Kubernetes cluster via a storage driver, are just solved and ubiquitous now. So we encourage customers to kind of use the solution that makes the most sense for their requirements. But where we specialize is not in really making volumes easy to consume within a Kubernetes environment, right? And that's what you're going to get with a lot of the default solutions on the market. But we specialize in all of the data management capabilities on top, right? We help you answer questions. What's my DR strategy, right? This particular app needs 0 RPO. This other app is fine with 1 backup a day. And how do I easily implement that within my Kubernetes cluster? Portworx we have a specific documented, tested answer for that. And it includes simply using a product that was purpose-built for that capability, PXDR or PX Backup. The same is true for PX Secure. If I need, how do I migrate from OpenShift 3.x to 4.x? Well, use PX Migrate. Our platform was specifically designed to solve those business requirements. And so what we found is that customers, as they mature their usage, as they bring more and more applications over them, we help our partners like Red Hat and like VMware kind of onboard those customers to the next level of usage. And so if you're part of enterprise and you're thinking about growing over time, adding more applications, having to solve things like data protection and data security, then jumping right into Portworx makes a lot of sense, because you're not going to have to kind of build a bunch of things yourself that ultimately aren't going to scale for you. You can just kind of pick that enterprise level solution right off the bat. So with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great questions. Thank you everybody who posted something, and if I didn't get to your question, we'll follow up over email with that. Again, what are your next steps? I would love it if you went to portworx.com, clicked on the contact sales button at the top, and tell us what you're working on. We would love to help you with a POC or a proof of concept. If you just want to learn more, get a custom demo, talk to our fantastic solutions engineering team, talk to our account executives who have been there and done that for so many other customers that we can help point you in the right direction. Even if it's not using Portworx, then we would love to do that. So please follow up and have a great rest of your day, and hope you enjoyed your lunch. Thanks everyone. Bye.